hide today from the next wave of this winter's seemingly relentless assault upon us.
Have you seen it as bad as this?
Not so far personally. Only when I was in a hurricane, but that was in the tropics.
And where were you?
I was in Honduras at the time, and that was obviously to be expected during their season. But this is obviously different, different part of the world, and it's, well, you can see for yourself, the waves are crashing in.
You don't need a telescope to see what's heading this way from the west. This is probably just the front tip of the St. Valentine's Day storm. No love and kisses being sent our way by Mother Nature today, but rather 80-mile-an-hour winds and more driving rain. And all of that is bad news for those communities in our region already battered and bruised by the weather.
Seafront businesses here, including this cafe, only just fought off the water when the sea wall was breached a week ago. Now they're bracing for another battle.
There was about 20 of us with brushes and sandbags, keeping the tide at bay, and we kept going until about 1:30 in the morning.
You were literally brushing back the sea?
Oh yeah, we were doing our king canute bit, and also it depends on the wind. If it backs to an easterly, then there's nothing we'll be able to do to keep the water out of the businesses.
This couple from Chichester were in Dorset for a Valentine weekend away. Not the romantic stroll on the seafront they perhaps envisaged, but like others, they were drawn to witness the ferocity of the elements.
Well, we come down a lot to Swanage, and we normally see it in the sunshine, and we're walking over the cliffs and things. Today is completely different, but it's absolutely stunningly beautiful as well. It's just so rough and beautiful.
There's something fantastic about seeing the elements, you know, in this particular environment.
As the storm moved east throughout the day, other areas began to feel the effects. Floodwater beginning to gather on the roads, appropriately here in Puddletown. Trains cancelled between Bournemouth and Brockenhurst due to flooding. And other seafronts farther east at Southsea and Brighton taking a battering too. And this may well be just the appetiser of this storm, with the main event yet to be served. Martin Dowse, ITV News.
Critical night ahead as further storms hit our region, and Simon's here to tell us a bit more about what to expect.
Yes, Simon, there are plenty of flood warnings in force now, aren't there?
There are indeed, as you'll see in the forecast later. Very messy night, and of course many homes and businesses already affected by the flooding of the past few weeks, but we're still fearing the worst with more wind and rain tonight. Now, there are currently 23 warnings in our region. The Environment Agency issues a flood warning in an area where flooding is expected, and residents should take immediate action. 12 of those are in Hampshire, 7 in Wiltshire and 4 in Dorset. Now, in Hampshire, those warnings are along the Itchen at Winchester, Ovington and Bishopstoke, the River Test at Romsey and Whitchurch, as well as the River Meon and the Wallop Brook in Wiltshire. The Bourne at Tidworth and Salisbury is at critical level, as well as the River Avon from Salisbury to Ringwood through the New Forest. Now in Dorset, there's a risk of further flooding from the Froome between Dorchester and Wareham and along the South Winterbourne. And there's still a high risk of coastal flooding along the Dorset coastline too. There are, of course, more details on all of the flood warnings and alerts where you live on our website, itv.com/news/Meridian. I can show you the pressure sequence just at the minute, which shows just how stormy things are. Very, very strong winds around that low pressure. You saw in Martin's report the coast is already treacherous. Don't go there unless you have to. We're talking about winds of maybe 18, 19 miles an hour tonight, so stay away. But that's inland too. But the low pressure will eventually slip away through tomorrow, and things will calm down a little bit through the weekend. But it's only a brief respite. You can see to the west the next lot of rain ready to come and make its presence felt on Monday.
Simon, thank you, and your full forecast later on in the programme, of course. Thank you.
Now, seeing the floods has brought back memories for those who witnessed similar events more than 60 years ago. Then, as now, the south was badly hit. But as Roy Cooper from the New Forest remembers, the cause wasn't rain, but melting snow. Richard Jones reports.
Seeing pictures like this takes one 83-year-old back to his teenage years living by the River Thames. Now Roy Cooper can watch the rain from the comfort of home. Back in 1947, he was being rescued from rising floodwaters by neighbours who had a punt.
I managed to get my stepmother out and the dog and myself. We pushed the fence down in the front garden to get out that way. It was very, very windy. They had shut all the electricity off. The bungalow was blowing backwards and forwards.
The winter of 1946-47 was harsh, and the floods came when a spring thaw coincided with heavy rain. Much of England was affected, and then, as now, the crypt of Winchester Cathedral was underwater. But thanks to the work of diver William Walker, flooding no longer endangered the building. At the turn of the 20th century, he spent years shoring up its foundations.
The crypt floods every year, much to the disappointment of people who sometimes come and want to go down there and discover that they can't. Because we receive water down from the hills, so what we're dealing with is groundwater here.
Flooding always causes damage and distress, but in 1947, people were used to being tested.
People, after the war, they've been used to problems during the war, so they all just got on with it. I was about 16 to 17, so I think at that age you don't see the danger so much.
Roy's experience of flooding was a long time ago. As the weather rages outside, he's warm and safe by the fire in his New Forest home. Richard Jones, ITV News.
Meanwhile, a 24-hour hub to provide flooded residents with support has been opened by Hampshire Fire and Rescue Service in Romsey. Community firefighters are offering flood safety information, practical tips and advice for anyone concerned about flooding from the River Test.
The biggest cruise ship ever built for the British market will begin sailing from Southampton in March next year.